We make our way down to below the roots, and we find Millennia waiting to kick our ass again and again and again until a naked man with a pot on his head comes to save our filthy casual ass.
I hope no one else is doing a bit, but I'm doing a bit.
Daddy's got a pod.
I'm Casey Kasem, and this one's for the perverts.
Join us in our strange ritual.
That is time-traveling love smut.
I can only say horny in one season opener.
A medium amount of fun and an extra large amount of sweaty.
From the minds that brought you Giraffe and Amerisaur.
No regrets, no masters.
I got dick jokes to make, man. Leave me alone.
This is good. This is good for anyone.
This one's going to be weird. I'm very interested to see where this goes.
Hello and welcome to Debate This, the show where no one is right, but someone is definitely wrong. In this show, we take time out of our busy adult lives to talk about comic books, video games, and oh my god, you guys, I finally played Warhammer, and my god, am I in trouble.
That joke is barely 12 hours old.
Yeah. He sent the picture to our group chat last night, and I responded. He tells us like someone with discovering a bite mark in a zombie film. He's gonna take us all down with him.
Yeah, we're gonna tie you to a tree and leave you with a gun with one bullet, and you do with that what you want.
In a Warhammer starter kit.
I was like, one bullet in a painting set.
We either go down with him or we old yeller him behind the shed.
Yeah, either one is probably fair. So look, as the resident FromSoftware and Souls fan and future Warhammer fan, I've taught you guys how to praise the sun with Dark Souls. I've taught you guys how to fear the old blood with Bloodborne, which are some of my personal favorite games of all time. So today, we're going to take the next and final step of this Souls journey, thanks to proud acolyte of #ButtThwompNation and chosen Tarnished at mgrum54. Today, we are talking about 2022's worldwide sensation, Elden Ring.
Woo! That was the one that was like all over TikTok, right?
That was the one that was all over TikTok.
It was the big one.
It's the one. It's the one Elon Musk played. And
well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did for like a second. Yeah.
It was the one that gave us Radon, the Star Scourge and lover of small horse.
That's correct. That's right.
I know that I've heard those words in that order, and I do not know why.
I'm going to tell you why you know that in 30 seconds.
He loved his horse so much. Leonard, I think, was the horse's name.
His name is Leonard, yes. All right, let me get into the intro. So as always, yada yada yada, fellow shard bearers, Matt, the deathbed companion Cole, Kyle, the all-knowing Harper, and Todd, the loathsome dung eater Thomas.
Well, now, hey, wait a minute.
Yes.
One of these is not like the others.
Yes, these do sound familiar. Yes, these are the same names that I used when we did our first episode about Elden Ring 2 years ago, which was episode 97, What Dat Dog Man Do, which was the one that we had Giovanni on.
That was the backyard cookout where I did bring Radon.
I remember that now.
Time has flattened into nothing because I cannot believe that was 2 years ago already.
Yeah, that episode was simultaneously yesterday and 3 generations ago.
A million years ago. Yeah, it was exactly 2 years ago because it is a little bit more than it's as of this recording late April, and that was, I believe, early March because that's why we were talking about cookouts.
If you would have gunned to my head today, said when did Elden Ring come out?
I would have said 2023.
Q1 23.
Yep, absolutely same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's wild. Well, outside of when it came out, what do you guys remember about Elden Ring? It's been 2 years, believe it or not. What do you guys know / remember about it?
You are the Tarnished.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically Shadow of Colossus, but way harder. Okay. You have to go fight all these monsters in different corners of the Shadowlands, and some of them are just dramatically unfair when they arrive to fight you the first time.
These are all true, yeah. That's pretty good summation, honestly.
I was gonna say it's FromSoft's answer to the Elder Scrolls series,
Okay.
Which I know is not entirely accurate. It is also part of the reason we haven't gotten the next Song of Ice and Fire book, which is also not entirely accurate. But
I actually would say I think both of those could be said arguably so. Yes.
They're both they're both, there's truth to both of those, but
they're more true than not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just know that this was the most recent Dark Souls game, and I remember it being really big on TikTok when you guys all had TikTok, and I had refused to download TikTok.
That's right.
So I remember getting a bunch of SMS messages with TikTok links to Dark Souls videos that I did not watch. And that's about it.
My last bit is on the Elon Musk thing, is that he played it after it blew up, and he bought Twitter, or was buying Twitter, and he made a build so horrendously bad that he got like mocked off of Elden Ring for a bit.
Mocked so hard that he bought Twitter.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Oh, I lied. I actually do remember something about Elden Ring, because I am fascinated by the cultural story that is Let Me Solo Her. And I very much remember Let Me Solo Her. And then also remember the copycat spinoff Let Her Solo Me, which I think is really funny.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, we will talk about Let Me Solo Her. But yeah, that was quite the cultural zeitgeist. Well, okay, so let's jump in and start by checking back on gaming's favorite little dev that could turned massive AAA powerhouse, FromSoftware, aka FromSoft. So the last we talked about FromSoft and about its lead creative masochist Hidetaka Miyazaki was when we talked about 2015's Bloodborne, which was last year. Bloodborne, if you remember, is a PS4 exclusive that took the core mechanics and themes of Dark Souls and put like a Victorian era spin on it with a little extra kiss of Cthulhu, if you will.
Just real quick, Andrew, sorry to stop so early, but for people who aren't familiar, this is not the same Miyazaki who did like the fun movies, right?
That's correct. Yes,
yeah.
This is Hidetaka Miyazaki, who is the lead developer at FromSoftware.
Next question, which is less of just like a bit. Do you know if there's any relation, or is Miyazaki just like a very common last name?
I do not believe there's any relation.
Cool.
So, following the massive success of Bloodborne, FromSoftware released Dark Souls 3 a year later in 2016, which Dark Souls 3 leaned even harder into the get good aspect of the series, which we've talked about a lot now. That's the punishing difficulty. That game is objectively good. Critically, though, it feels like kind of like a greatest hits of the games before it. It's my least favorite Dark Souls. It's the only one that I actually never completely finished. Believe it or not.
I think that, and that's generally like the perspective I've gotten when
years
it came
later
out.
Years later, Dark Souls 2 has definitely like gone the Wind Waker route of like become a classic, whereas Dark Souls 3 has kind of gone the like Twilight Princess route, where it's like people are like, this is what everybody wanted at the time, but it leaned too hard into like the fan service stuff. So 2 years after DS3, we got Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, which I don't believe any of you guys. Do any of you guys remember that one or played it?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I remember it existing, but that's
okay. So that was at the time definitely the largest departure from that Souls format. It wasn't an action RPG at all, but rather it was just a straight like third-person action game, kind of like it was very heavily inspired by Tenchu, if you remember that series, or Ninja Gaiden.
Okay.
And so the game definitely used some of those like Souls mechanics. It was still balls ass hard and, you know, kind of used a lot of the same UI elements, but it pulled in stealth components and introduced verticality. So now you could like run and scale buildings and like assassinate people from the roofs. Like it was,
a grappling hook thing.
You had a grappling hook. Exactly. Yeah. So it was very much like more of a character action game rather than like a traditional like action RPG. So with Sekiro being such a departure, we all kind of the fans, you know, took this as more or less an endpoint for the Souls series. Like, okay, well, you know, it's gonna, maybe it just dies with Soulsborne and we get, you know, things that are kind of like in its spiritual successors. Along with the announcement of a remaster of the original Demon's Souls, which if you remember is kind of like the progenitor of all of these, it pretty much seemed like at this point, like, yeah, Souls is done. You know, it's time to move on. And then during the Xbox press conference at E3 2019, a 2-minute trailer aired from Bandai Namco. The trailer began with a disembodied voice chattering some mumbo-jumbo fantasy nonsense, followed by the title card, A new world created by Hidetaka Miyazaki, ... and George R.R. Martin, and the universe exploded.
Yeah.
Yeah. In that trailer, we got some real incoherent imagery that I wanted to show here in image 1. Now,
you don't have to.
Yeah. Now, I want to preface this by saying, you know, that this is going to be a really special image library because, one, like, Elden Ring is a beautiful game. There's so much cool art and imagery and just things to look at. Also, this is going to be quite the noun soup, so I tried to balance this out with images so that that will help to keep everything straight. I also wanted to represent how incoherent this announcement trailer really was.
Yeah, when you said that these are going to be images that help,
mostly
the noun soup,
not all.
Who's helping what with this image? Because I know this isn't AI generated, but it looks AI generated.
Sure does.
Yeah. If you're listening, you're not looking. It's literally like a bunch of human arms grasping each other, and then there's like a severed arm, and then behind it is the figure of this person kind of like splayed out like in a Jesus-esque T-pose, like a crucifixion type T-pose, with their head bowed down. So, like, again, this could literally be anything, but, like, cool, we're going to get something funky from George R.R. Martin. Dope.
I was going to say, that is a George R.R. Martin-ass image if there ever was one.
So the major thing we learned is that this game would be called Elden Ring. And like I said, without knowing a single more piece of data, the collective internet exploded that day. This is return to form. Like, yeah, man, we're getting more. We're back to Souls. We're so back, baby. So 2 years and an entire global pandemic passed without any more information about Elden Ring. You know, was this fabled collab between dark fantasy giants still happening? Or, as Kyle mentioned, would this be like the end of A Song of Ice and Fire and never come to fruition?
Both legitimate possibilities.
Both very much possibilities. That said, in 2021, we got the full cinematic trailer that shows the iconic battle between Radahn, who Todd mentioned earlier, and the iconic warrior in these golden prosthetics that we now know as Millennia. Millennia is kind of serving as the box art, the icon of the series. And then we finally got our release date of January 2022. And image 2 here is of that trailer. That trailer is really cool. We'll post it in the notes, and that's what I sent the guys ahead of time. This is a pretty important moment in the history and the lore of Elden Ring. It's this climactic battle between these two effectively demigods, Radahn, who's the big Ganondorf looking dude, and then Millennia, who is the smaller frame, warrior wearing what looks like an Asgardian helmet, and she at one point she snaps a prosthetic arm in her right shoulder socket. It's really cool. But this is a cool scene. So we'll take a look at that video if you're looking in the show notes. Now, the game was ultimately delayed by a month, finally released in February 25 of 2022. So literally, a little more than 2 years ago.
Can't have George R.R. Martin in something without a last-minute unexpected delay, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, it's kind of amazing this game didn't get delayed more because of, given the pandemic, the chip shortage. I think most of it was probably done by the time the pandemic happened, but still. So the game released in February of 22 to literally everyone in the world's chagrin, outside of the development team of Horizon Forbidden West, because that game famously came out the same day.
Oh,
rough.
No.
Yeah. And the reason why that's kind of a joke is the original Horizon came out the same day as Breath of the Wild.
Oh no.
So just that development team was cursed, unfortunately.
Yeah, they sure were.
Now, as we mentioned at the top of the episode, this game was the only thing people were talking about for months on end. It dominated social media, and people like Todd and Matt, who had never played a Souls game and had zero interest in playing a Souls game, were all watching hours of this content. Our friends were streaming it. People were talking about it. Once the Let Me Solo Her thing hit, the news outlets were talking about it. And of course,
there was a clip that I remember very specifically of a giant Indiana Jones style boulder chasing someone, and that person jumped off the pathway and stood on a rail to evade the boulder, and so the boulder paused, stopped, turned to the person, and then after a 90-degree turn rammed into him anyway. And that point I was like, what the fuck is this game?
So Well, let's talk about why did Elden Ring hit so hard in a way that not even Dark Souls had penetrated the market before it? Because Elden Ring, to Todd's point, is the same punishing, difficult type of game that follows that kind of opus that Dark Souls did. It uses all of the same action RPG mechanics as Dark Souls. You've got your right hand weapon, your left hand shield that can block and parry. You can swap out the shield for a second weapon and deal extra damage, trading off for defense. You've got bonfires as checkpoints, which are now sites of grace. Those refill your healing charges. They respawn all the regular enemies. You have runes instead of souls. That's your main currency of the game. And just like before, you lose all your shit when you die, and you got to go reclaim them before you die again. Otherwise, you lose them forever, right? Like, all of those things are here in Elden Ring. But what makes Elden Ring so different, and I think why people gravitated toward it so much easier, is because it's an open world game. And it's an open world game, not like Assassin's Creed where you just get a bunch of like fucking map markers, but it is that Breath of the Wild model where you wake up in a tomb and you just go. You just go. You have a massive map and you just go and explore. And there's so much to find in this game, and there's so much to just get lost and experience on your own. There is a storyline, but the storyline is incoherent, which we're going to talk about today. But for the most part, like, this game is just like, it's just exploring and, you know, diving into tombs and discovering weird shit and fighting monsters, and all the more time you're getting stronger and stronger. And this is the major difference with the old games, because the old games are very linear. You know, you go from point A to point B, and if you're stuck on a hard boss, there's really nothing to do about it. You just kind of...
That's what I was going to say. Like, I think the difference between, like, you must overcome this challenge to progress, to this challenge is here, I'll come back to it later, is a huge difference, I think, in the game.
Yeah, it really gets rid of that whole, like, you just have to get better mentality, and alleviates from having to, like, replay a boss over and over and over and over again. Yeah, the bosses are still hard, but you can go and level up and grind somewhere else and come back and your numbers are way higher. Further, there's a different mechanic in this game where you can summon spirits, and spirits are little just like NPC characters that take the aggro for you, take the damage. Which just ameliorates a lot of the difficulty. So you can certainly interact with that if you want to, but the nice thing is you don't have to. And that's why this is the perfect entry point for a game like this.
You can get the pot man.
You can get the pot man. There is a literal pot man.
Not the man that you buy like illicit drugs from, but
a man of pots. A man made of pot.
Of a pot. His name is Alexander. He is a pot.
Is he a pot of greed?
Is he a pot of greed? Do you draw?
He kind of looks. I mean,
I don't have an image in here, but you can search Alexander Elden Ring. He's kind of a pot of greed.
I mean, how many other ways can you put a man in a pot?
There's a few, not a lot.
Here you go. I got her, boy.
Yeah, he's a little pot of greedy.
Yeah.
I love it. I love he stands stoutly with his arms crossed. That's so fun.
Yeah, he's a strong man. He's a strong pot. So let's start up top. The story of Elden Ring, the incomprehensible story of Elden Ring that I will lay bare for you, my three friends, begins with the history of the Lands Between, a world that at its origin had been ruled by ancient dragons. Do you guys remember how Dark Souls started this way too?
Kind of.
I was going to say, we've heard this song before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Much like, I mean, this is all intents and purposes a spiritual successor to Dark Souls. This is them just redoing Dark Souls, but just in a different universe. So long ago, a meteor hit the Lands Between, and from it came a mysterious cosmic entity called the Greater Will. Now, at some point, a traveler from a far-off land came in contact with the Greater Will and was ultimately identified to be its vessel. Thus, Marika, and possibly the most important character in this entire story, becomes Queen Marika the Eternal. Queen Marika is shown in Image 3.
More T poses.
A lot of T poses. That's actually the same. That's the same character from Image 1.
Just less.
Got it.
Okay.
So Queen Marika is the closest thing that this universe has to a Jesus, and you can tell by the Judeo-Christian imagery. Yes, it's subtle.
Yeah. You're kidding.
It's some real Neo in the Matrix.
Some real Coheed and Cambria Ash Sherry here. So Marika inherited the power of the Greater Will, the Elden Ring. Matt, they said the name of the thing.
He said the name of the movie!
Of course, the Elden Ring was a series of runes that governs over the laws of reality, like life and death itself. Now, with power over the Elden Ring, Marika, by all accounts, became a god. And Image 4 is the Elden Ring, which is on the box art. It's what it's called, but it's also, like, as you can see, it's a series of these, like, inscribed golden runes.
That
this
answers my first question.
What is the Elden Ring?
What is it? A physical ring? Is it a metaphoric
much
name
like,
given to something else?
Yeah, much like the Triforce, it is the ultimate power, and also the establishes the laws and the physical laws and reality of this world.
How does it present in universe? Like the Triforce, you bring up the Triforce, which are these 3 pieces of an artifact that you collect.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Elden Ring like?
So it actually, it's a great question. That's a question that isn't answered until the final boss. Because we don't actually know until we find out at the end what the Elden Ring more or less is. What we know is that it's made up of runes, like magical runes, and we will actually collect those magical runes. So much like collecting pieces of the Triforce, it's the Triforce.
What do you, when you get a rune, what do you have? Do you have a drawing on a piece of paper? Do you have a tablet that new part of it glows?
Yeah. I wish I had a good answer for you, Kyle, other than you have an item in your inventory.
Okay.
What you probably have is a piece of flayed skin with an inscription on it, if I'm being real.
Excellent. Perfect.
I mean, it never necessarily says that, but that's kind of the implication.
Okay.
So Queen Marika used her newfound power to establish what would be known as the Golden Order, a new religion / series of laws to follow the Greater Will. So the Golden Order becomes the law of the land, effectively.
Queen Marika,
yeah, exactly. And Queen Marika, by extension, becomes the embodiment of the Greater Will. However, she's not the only cosmic entity that's connected to it. Now, littered across the lands between, we find the 2 fingers, which are literal big ol' fucking human ass fingers that commune with the cosmic outer god. Image 5, that's a 2 fingers.
Whose fingers are those?
There's 2 of them.
There's 2 of them.
Again, I want to go back to 20 minutes ago when you said the photos in the Imgur will help our audience. This helps no one.
I'm sorry, Todd. Wasn't your question, what do the 2 fingers look like? That's what the 2 fingers look like, the 2 fingers.
Yeah, man. You're right.
What did you expect the 2 fingers to look like, Todd?
This has got real big dead dove don't eat energy.
Yeah, man. So Marika fought against the ancient dragons and established the capital of her new golden empire, the capital city of Leyndell. Nestled at its center was the source of the Greater Will, and now the Golden Order's power, the Erd Tree, ERD tree. And that's shown in image 6. That is the big golden tree. This golden tree is nestled in the center of the lands between. And as you play the game, you can see the Erd tree, albeit in the distance, but you can see the Erd tree in pretty much every point in the game. The draw distance of this game is incredible. And a lot of the images we're going to look at are actual landscapes taken straight from screenshots of the game. Because this is what's really like, when you talk about next gen, like what a next gen game looks like, I think Elden Ring is still the best example of it.
Talk just for a minute, Andrew. Like, what is draw distance? What does that?
Oh, yeah, it's so when you're playing a 3D game, how far out you can see in the horizon. So, like, if you've ever been playing a game on the Nintendo Switch, and like, for example, Pokemon Legends Arceus or Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and things just start to like pop in.
Yeah.
Like an old school Nintendo N64 game. That's a low draw distance. That means that like the game hasn't processed a field of vision that's farther than like X feet.
Got it. Thank you.
So you're welcome. So because Elden Ring is such a powerhouse, the game is constantly processing a very large field of view. It's something Breath of the Wild got away with obscuring the distance, but you could always see like Death Mountain, for example.
Yeah,
in Breath of the Wild. It's kind of like that. Now, with the power of the Golden Order behind her, Marika set about to conquer the rest of the lands between in the name of the Greater Will, right? She's establishing her empire. The next foe was the Fire Giants in the Northern Wastes. So she sent her trusted general and champion to lead the army into victory, and upon his return, the two were actually married, and he, the general, ascended into godhood. Now, as what is called an Empyrean. Again, this is going to be a lot of nouns, so I'll explain. Now, per the Greater Will, aka the Golden Order, aka the Erd Tree, they're all kind of one and the same at this point. Empyreans are chosen by the Two Fingers.
Okay.
The Two Fingers to lead. Ugh. So Empyreans are chosen people to lead. They are not gods by default. They become gods. But in order to lead, they need to have a consort and a shadow. Kind of like a nobody and a and a heartless kind of.
Everything is Kingdom Hearts.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
Who gets Norded? Who gets Norded, Andrew? You got to tell us.
So a consort, it's a spouse, it's a partner, whatever. A shadow is kind of like a beast that acts like their bodyguard, their double. Basically, they're like unflinching servant.
A familiar.
A familiar is another way to put it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Godfrey, this is Marika's champion. Godfrey becomes Marika's new consort, and by default, the Elden Lord, which is like the lands between's like first gentleman, basically. So Godfrey takes the beast Sirach on his back, and which becomes his new shadow. And this is Godfrey, who becomes the first Empyrean, the first Elden Lord in Image 7.
This is pretty fucking
rad
sick as shit.
It's dope as fuck.
Yeah.
It's rad that he's able to control Anjani.
It is Anjani from Magic the Gathering 100%. Yes.
Is that like a lion head with arms and that's it? Like, is there not a like back half of that?
It lives on his back.
Cool.
Yeah, it's dope as hell.
I would like to buy this on a fleece blanket at a truck stop.
It does have big, I bought this at Cabela's energy for sure.
Matt, we don't have the fleece blanket anymore, but we can get someone to airbrush it on the side of your van.
Hell yeah.
Oh, let's go.
So Marika and Godfrey have 3 children. Their first and oldest is Godwyn the Golden. Godwyn the Golden would lead armies in future campaigns against the dragons. After Godwyn comes the twins, Mohg and Morgott, who were both born with a terrible curse. And in Image 8, we see Morgott and Mohg. These are the omens. Now, I'll explain. Omens are kind of a whole other thing. We don't need to really get into it, but all you need to understand is, like, sometimes babies are born with horns. And if they're born with horns, that means they're going to become basically demons, or like Oni, like Japanese demons. So you have to cut off their horns, which effectively kills them. However, omens born into royalty get to live, albeit they just have to live in captivity in the sewers of the city, which is like not better.
Sure.
So yeah, so these two are born as omens, and they get sent to the sewers, and they live chained up in the sewers beneath the city for a long, long time.
Neat.
So that's it.
Andrew, did you skip Malekith?
I didn't get to Oh, yes, thank you. I did skip Malekith. It's fine. It's all kind of meanwhile. Okay. So they have 3 kids. Meanwhile, working in the background is Marika's shadow, which is we find out later is her half brother Malekith, which is like this, like he's like a beast-like entity. So he's a familiar, but also her half brother. But again, this is incoherent. So like maybe both, maybe neither. Doesn't really matter.
George R.R. Martin.
Some shit.
Some shit.
Yeah.
The villain from Thor 2.
The villain from Thor 2. Yeah, it kind of is. So it is through Malekith that Marika gets her name, the Eternal, because Marika actually removes the rune of death from the Elden Ring. And then she hides it inside Malekith's black blade. Now, by doing this, remember I said the Elden Ring governs the like laws in reality. So by doing this, she effectively eliminates death as a concept.
Probably will be fine.
Won't be a problem later.
Yeah.
But remember, she owns this rune. So more accurately, she gives herself complete control over death. Therefore cementing her power, which of course will not become a problem in the future.
Yeah, definitely not.
Seems fine.
Everybody who's controlled the power of death has always been super cool about it.
Super chill and super cool about it.
Notoriously chill people who control the power of death.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Marika's campaign for conquest is going well. Things are popping off, except for one particular faction out in the west, led by the Carrion royal family and the mages of Raya Lucaria. We'll get there later. Don't worry about the names. So Marika, in order to address this rebellion, Marika sends her second champion, Radagon, to the land of Liurnia to deal with these rebels. Now, Radagon is interesting because we don't actually have an image of Radagon. We only see Radagon in statues. But Radagon is talked about a lot in this game. And Radagon is most iconic or most known for his flowing red hair. Radagon fights several battles against the head of the Carrion royal family. The head of their royal family is the head astrologian. She's a wizard. Her name is Renala. So big wizard energy. Renala and Radagon fight battle after battle, and it's like, do you remember the beginning of Shang-Chi, where like Shang-Chi's dad and mom are fighting, and then just kind of like start making out? That's what happens here. So Radagon and Renala eventually just fall in love and stop fighting and get married, which is okay.
Love a good enemies to lovers story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is Renala of the full moon. She's got moon power. She's a moon witch. Yeah. That's image 9. So Renala and Radagon now married. Interestingly enough, the rebellion is quelled because Renala and the rest takes the rest of the Carrion nobles into the Golden Order with her new husband. So Radagon did his job. Cool.
Yeah.
So Renala and Radagon have 3 children. First, we have Rani, who inherits her mother's talent for lunar magic. Second is Radon, who is the big Hulking Ganondorf dude we talked about. Radon would ultimately become a general and follow in his father's footsteps. And third was Rykard, another which we don't get a ton of information about. We know he's a war hero, but all we really know about Rykard is he's known as Rykard the Blasphemer. And these are images 10, 11, and 12 of Rani, Radon, and Rykard.
Okay, so one of these things is not like the other.
That's correct. Yeah. Well, there's actually there's a couple things to note. So I'll note first, Rani. This is actually Rani's second form, and we'll talk about why that is later. But you see, she's got 4 arms.
Yeah, the extra health bar shows up.
Yeah.
Radon looks like this is his image from the trailer. So there's, he's bereft of Louis the horse or whatever the hell his name is. And then of course we've got a portrait of Rykard. We don't know what Rykard looks like just yet. Cool. So Rani, Radon, Rykard. So what I mean by Rykard being a blasphemer is, Rykard kind of got sick of the Golden Order's kind of random prejudice. The Golden Order had this knack for just like excluding hordes of people because it felt like it. And this is, by excluding people, what this means is certain people were deemed undeserving of the grace of the Erd Tree, which again is like the main power, the energy that drives this land, right? So, it'd be like if the Triforce just didn't apply to some people, basically.
Yeah.
Their midichlorians aren't high enough.
Exactly.
The normal prejudice you develop when you're conquering an entire land.
That's right, Kyle.
For what you believe is a righteous cause. Yeah.
That's right, Kyle. So the Golden Order decided that certain humans were no longer deserving of its grace, and therefore would have to be exiled from the lands between. And as part of that exile, Marika ordered her husband Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, to lead that exile. Godfrey, as part of who's getting exiled, like he wasn't coming back. So Godfrey would effectively become the first of this new line of Tarnished, i.e., those deemed not worthy by the Earth Tree.
That's where that noun comes from.
Yep, that's right.
What is there any justification given for why Godfrey is now exiled?
Just does. Yeah, just does.
What's Godfrey's reaction to this? Is this a role
not happy.
he accepts willingly,
Yeah.
or is it...
We will find out that this may or may not become a problem later.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
So, following Godfrey's exile, Radagon, now having effectively quelled the rebellion and had a bunch of kids, Radagon gets summoned back to Leyndell, and in a surprise move to everyone, straight up broke off his marriage to Renala and married Marika instead.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. So Radagon
and Radagon is just
Radagon
another
is
champion.
the second champion, red-haired champion, father of Rani, the other one, the big guy, Radon and Rykard.
I was wondering if another George R.R. Martinism had shown up, which is incest, and we're not there yet.
This may become a problem later.
Uh-oh.
So Marika and Radagon are now married. Radagon gets ascended, just like Godfrey before him, becomes the new Elden Lord. However, his ascension also retroactively makes his children gods as well. So they weren't before, but now they retroactively become gods. I don't know why they just do. Don't bother. Don't ask about it.
It's kind of a really fun system that makes no sense.
Yep, it sure is.
Yeah. I think it has it follows its own internal logic. But
and it's like nobility. Suddenly if someone was found to be a king and a queen for whatever reason, their children would also be part of that royal family. This is just different.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally won't become a problem later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It is just vague enough because like becoming a god also is like a transfer of power, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's vague enough to make sense. So Radagon and Marika also have two children together. Those are the twins, Mikola and Millennia. Both Mikola and Millennia were unfortunately afflicted with terrible curses at birth. Mikola's curse was that his body can't mature past the point of like a small, feeble child. And Millennia is born with a terrible disease called scarlet rot that would ultimately destroy much of her body. I'll remind you, Millennia is the warrior in the golden armor from the trailer video. So image 13 is a portrait of Mikola. It's the only image of Mikola we have in the entire game, which you can kind of tell like a very small, feeble, like blonde child.
Sure.
And then 14 is of Mikola. You can see that red hair she inherited from Radagon. And that's her right prosthetic arm that she snaps into place in that video. She's very cool.
She is very cool.
That was a lot of names, but really, like, that's the main cast of characters. Outside of a few other NPCs, like, that is the rogues gallery that we're going to be dealing with in this game. Now, I've devised a helpful naming convention to help you remember that. All you need to do is look at the first letter of the name, and you can kind of trace their lineage. So, Godfrey's lineage begins with G, Radagon's lineage begins with the letter R, and Marika's lineage begins with the letter M. You know, G, R, M.
First off, I was just going to say how good that is, and now I've flipped what I think. And I think
Todd,
me too.
I think
at first I was like, "That's so clever."
I think that is very good, especially for because the way it's revealed to you in the game is not with this script and corresponding images to help you keep it straight. It's drip fed to you through context clues. So I think making it as like dumb and and easy to piece together as possible like that is a very smart move. That's very good.
So that's the main like pantheon of the demigods here, and I'm gonna use words like Empyrean and demigods kind of interchangeably. So just note that when I know that all of these guys will be bosses too, if that wasn't already clear.
Yeah, naturally.
Okay,
of course.
So much like all good empires, they must eventually fall. And every fall needs its ensuing act. And the ensuing act of America's empire's fall begins with the Night of the Black Knives, when a group of assassins murder Godwyn the Golden. There's a reason why I haven't shown you a picture of Godwyn the Golden, is because there's really no pictures that exist, because Godwyn is killed off before the events of the game.
Got it.
I know that name. That name's important later.
So how does this become possible in America's world without death? The reason, and this is why this is the ensuing act, is the weapons used to kill Godwyn are actually crafted from a piece of the death rune, which was stolen from Malekith's blade. So remember, Marika stole the death rune and hid it in Malekith's blade. That rune is basically used to carve these weapons that kill Godwyn the Gold. So that's in image 15. This is of the intro video, not the trailer, but the game's intro, where you see these hooded figures carving this like really grotesque symbol into a man's back. And this is they're basically making, like, they're doing an incantation. They're carving the rune of death into his back, effectively. It's pretty fucking brutal.
That's metal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the one who orchestrated all of this, actually Ronnie, who was, of course, the daughter of Renala and Radigan. That's the one with the four arms, right? So Ronnie's whole kind of thing behind this is Ronnie wanted a world free of the tyranny of the Golden Order and of Marika's stranglehold on death itself. Moreover, she wasn't super happy about her dad or Radigan leaving her mom, so she was like, "Yeah, fuck you! Like, I'm gonna kill my half brother." So, along with, well, I guess not half brother. So Ronnie, along with, and there's a whole other plot here that doesn't really matter right now, but Ronnie, along with Mikola and Millennia, were all chosen as Empyreans by the Two Fingers. Remember the Two Fingers? So they were basically said by the Two Fingers, each of you have been chosen to be the next, like, Elden Lord, basically, to succeed Radigan as the Elden Lord, yada, yada, yada. So Ronnie has zero interest in being an Empyrean. She doesn't want any of this. So her way out is to steal this death rune and not only kill Godwyn, but kill herself. So this was kind of so the night of the Black Knives, that was an operation to kill both Ronnie and Godwyn the Golden. Except it didn't quite work. So what happened was the rune was effectively incomplete because what they stole was incomplete. So the murders didn't fully take on either one. Godwyn's soul was killed, but his body still lived on. So in the trailer, you see a man getting killed, and then like his eyes open and like kind of like roll up upside their head.
Yep.
That is the lifeless husk of Godwyn, who just becomes like a vegetable for the rest of eternity because his soul is dead, but his body is alive. Ronnie, on the other hand, lost her body, but her soul remains. So the reason why Ronnie looks so much different than her siblings is because that's not actually her body. She kind of transmorphed her soul into like a doll, and has become like a living doll.
Oh.
So she has this like weird visage where on the left side of her, like on the right side of her, stage left of her face, where like this like kind of corporeal form is. That's basically like her soul that's like embodied in this doll, essentially.
Huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So cool. Fine. So it didn't work.
But
what did work is that Marika was none too pleased. So Godwyn's murder completely broke Marika in a very real way. And in an act of grief, and maybe also possibly an act of rebellion, Marika shatters the Elden Ring in just one swift move. So the Triforce is now obliterated. This is how we get our shards across the universe. Now, the Greater Will sees this act as a rebellion as a threat, and in response, shackles Marika to the remains of the Elden Ring and locks her inside the Erd Tree. Marika retains her power and influence for the Greater Will, but she's basically now a puppet, and that's why we see her in that like Jesus-like T-pose always chained up, because the only real image of Marika is of her shackled at the hands of the Greater Will. Okay, so all this is going on. Radigan, being just like an all-out stalwart proponent of the Golden Order, he is just a, he is a company man.
He's a believer, yeah.
He's a true believer. Radigan attempts to fix the Elden Ring, but is not successful. And now, with the Elden Ring shattered, the power and the influence of the Greater Will is diminished. This then sets the scene for other factions to start popping up, led by other outer gods and kind of in the disparate reaches of the lands between. Meanwhile, the remnants of the Elden Ring are collected as shards and then transferred among the demigods, again, Marika and Radagon's collective children. And again, it's not really, to Kyle's earlier question, we don't really know how. It's not like a physical transference. It's just they basically inherit some portion of the Elden Ring's power.
Sure.
And each of them basically then retreat alongside their various armies, factions, and kind of go deeper into all of their respective strongholds to hold onto their little shard of power. Numerous wars were waged between these demigods for the control of that power that would become known as the Shattering Wars. The Shattering Wars is embodied by the most iconic battle, which is that battle between Millennia and Radahn.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And then finally, the power that dictated, so you might remember the Tarnished that were exiled, the whatever reigning power that dictated that exile also kind of waned, and suddenly certain descendants of the exiled Godfrey begin to get called back, and they're getting called back like from death, like literally, like the Erd Tree's grace is like reanimating these corpses and basically like compelling them back to the lands between. And this is where we basically set up the introduction of the game. So at this point, we've got the Shattering Wars have ended in basically a stalemate. All of these different demigods are locked in different corners of the continent. They're all kind of hoarding their own shattered, remnants of the Elden Ring's power. The Greater Will has effectively devised a plan to pull these certain Tarnished back to the lands between as a ruse to get them to reclaim the shards, to kind of do, because again, the Greater Will doesn't have a physical form. Its closest thing to physical form is Marika, which is, locked up in the Erd Tree. So it uses these Tarnished to basically like be, to come and collect the different MacGuffins around the world. The Greater Will then summons the following back to the lands between from their respective grades, and we're going to do a PowerPoint slideshow. So we've got images 16 through 20. We've got Horalu, Chieftain of the Badlands. We've got Goldmask, who is a scholar and a priest of the Golden Order.
It's lazy naming.
Yeah. We've got Fia, a.k.a. the Deathbed Companion, who is a woman that has built a religion around death, and that is Godwin's vegetable-ass body next to her.
Rad. Cool.
Yep. We've got a criminal known only as the Dung Eater.
Good.
Don't love that this one was tied to me.
all who hear his name fear him. For he is
finally,
the Dung Eater. Sorry, go ahead.
He is the Dung Eater. And finally, Sir Gideon Ofnir, a.k.a. the All-Knowing, who is whose corpse is lying in a dead man's chest ass like bed of coins.
Yeah.
And finally, the most important is us, the player, a Tarnished of no renown who is meant to recollect the shards of the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord. And that is where we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will go through the actual beat by beat of the game. Stay with us. And welcome back. Okay, so I covered the first half of this rather quick, knowing that this was going to be, again, a noun soup. It's going to be a lot of names. I said off break, it's like watching the first episode of Game of Thrones the first time, which is like, oh my god, I don't care. So please note, I will remind folks of names. Like, this will all, kind of make sense. We had to get through that, but the next half of it's going to be a lot breezier. I do want to also note that this is basically where the George R.R. Martin contribution stops.
Okay.
There was a lot of dialogue around before this game came out. Like, what all did George R.R. Martin actually do? Like, did he write this script? And really, it was he built the world. Like, he built the setting. He kind of developed the lands between, and he developed a lot of the background. But like from here, the actual beats of the game really is like it's in Miyazaki's hands.
He did what everyone once wanted George Lucas to do with Star Wars, which was like create the ideas and then hand it off to someone else to make it all make sense.
Yes, exactly. So we don't get any gulp shittos here in this one. Okay. So the game begins with you, the Tarnished, in what else? An abandoned graveyard, because it always is an abandoned graveyard. Always a lighthouse, always a graveyard. You exit all full of piss and vinegar to set out on your new quest, only to immediately get rocked by some fucking spider with a dozen real-ass human arms and legs, and that's image 21.
Don't like that.
This is what I expected to see today.
Yeah, now we're back, baby.
With the head of like an emo kid wearing a beanie.
Yep.
It looks like
it's
an emo kid
Shadowheart from Baldur's Gate 3.
It's Shadowheart with about 13 limbs, yeah. So after getting ganked by this nightmare, immediately getting ganked by this nightmare, you wake up in a different tomb, but this time with a fully interactive tutorial. Hooray.
Yay.
So you can choose to run the tutorial and teach all about the returning Dark Souls mechanics, including the new one, jumping.
Oh shit.
Oh shit.
We just
which
unlocked
is like
a third dimension.
Man, I said it as a joke, but like it really, I don't know why, but it does change this gameplay so much because it now opens up a whole host of like jumping attacks and jumping slashes, which are like pretty fun. Or you open the door of the tomb into the lands between, and you do that, and then we get our requisite Breath of the Wild opening moment that all open world games require now, which is image 22.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
there it
so
is.
You're overlooking. So this is the world, and we're gonna have a lot of these panoramas because I think again this is the best way to experience this game in this format. So this is overlooking the fields of Limgrave, which are the first kind of major area that's unlocked immediately in this game. Up to the top left here, you see that big castle on the hill. That is Stormvale Castle. That is ultimately where we're headed. Now, while we're doing that, after we're wandering around the fields of Limgrave, we get approached by a mysterious woman in a brown cloak. She introduces herself as Melina, which unfortunately is another M name. I know it's very confusing. It's also very close to like 3 other names.
Right.
But hey, here we are. Melina says, you don't have a maiden, which is something that we've heard already at this point a couple other times and are like, the fuck is a maiden? What does that mean? People have been calling us maidenless, which is like became a joke, in social media.
It was a whole thing.
So she tells us, I'm going to strike you a deal. She says, if you can get me safely to the Erd Tree, which is that big golden tree in the middle of the continent, I will help you get stronger. I.e., she's going to be our level up.
Hey, cool.
So
Okay.
yeah, so level image 23 is Melina. She's our buddy. So every time you go to a bonfire, in this case a grace, Melina appears. She just kind of zonks out of thin air. So this isn't like an escort mission or something. She just kind of appears. She's always with you. It's not explained. It doesn't have to be. But she levels you up.
She's got a hell of a tattoo on her eyeball there.
Yeah,
she sure do.
Doesn't look similar to a character we've met already at all.
Who has their
not
soul
at all,
tied to...
Not at all, Kyle. And while we don't have an answer to that, there's a lot of speculation why that is, which we'll get there in some amount of time. But she also gives us the best gift of all, which is our new spirit horse, Torrent, which on image 24 is Torrent. That's our good
kind
boy.
of a goat.
It is kind of a goat.
He does have goat-like features. He is a spirit horse. He's a ghost horse, so you can summon him out of thin air.
Mm-hmm.
What's cool is the animation to summon Torrent is you literally you press the button and your character jumps up in the air and Torrent just appears. It's really cool.
Is Torrent technically a unicorn? Does he only have the one horn?
He's got 2 horns.
Oh, okay.
It's just a
binacorn.
He's a
binacorn.
A dunicorn.
Todd.
A dunicorn?
Yeah, like duo.
Dunicorn. I like dunicorn better than binacorn. Personally.
Binacorn.
A dunicorn is a unicorn that lives in the deserts.
There it is.
All right, so a few hours later, we're at this point, we're dicking around, we're having a good time, we're probably dying like a shit ton of times. Melina eventually grants us access to our requisite hub. Every Souls game needs a hub. That's where you get the NPCs, that's where you go shopping, that's where you do all the stuff. Our hub this game is called the Round Table Hold. And the Round Table Hold sits in, much like if you remember the Hunter's Dream in Bloodborne, it sits in like a different layer of reality. Again, like, don't question it. It doesn't matter. It's all timey-wimey and dreamy-weemy. But the Round Table Hold is effectively where the rest of the chosen Tarnished are kind of just hanging out. They're using it as a home base. So that, like, laundry list of names that I just gave you before we hit the break. Sir Gideon Ofnir, the Dung Eater, right? Like all of these guys are here, like pop in and out of the Round Table Hold. So they're all different NPCs that we encounter throughout the game. With the exception of Horaloo, which we'll get there. So we do meet at the point Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing. He is the, that's how they say it in the intro, and I can never not say it. Gideon is like the de facto leader of the Round Table Hold, and he's in his office full of books, and he tells us that we need to hunt these shard bearers, aka these are the demigods, right? We need to hunt these shard bearers who all hold pieces of the Elden Ring, something, then that's how we can get to the Erdtree, something. You get it. So image 25 is the Round Table Hold. That's our new home.
Okay.
Neat.
So we do that. We travel across the countryside, fighting bandits and monsters and probably getting killed more. We dick around in caves. We explore ancient ruins, all the open world stuff. Speaking of the open world, let's look at the actual world map of the lands between. So image 26, it's a little bit hard to read here, but if you want to understand a sense of place and like where we are, we're basically starting at the southern, not the like southernmost like Australia looking continent, but the little continent to the left of the big red one, that's Limgrave, and that's our kind of starting area, and we're gonna effectively make our way around like a crescent moon to the Erdtree, which is smack there dab right in the middle. That big snowy area, don't worry about it. We won't talk about that for a long time.
George R. R. Martin sure does love his big snowy areas too.
He does love a big snowy area.
There's always a northern waste. That's right.
Dude's so horny for big snowy areas.
So part of while we're here, we also learn about grace, which I mentioned grace a couple times, but again, this is the embodiment of the Golden Order, aka the Greater Will. Grace governs the law of the world, but grace also is our bonfire, and that allows us to recharge our healing, healing stuff and all that nonsense. But it also provides us our waypoint, because this game doesn't really have like a lot of, well, it does now. When it originally launched, it didn't have quest markers and things like that. It was just like mark places on a map, kind of like, again, like Breath of the Wild. But the main scenario quests were kind of highlighted in this wispy golden like ribbon, almost like a Northern Lights dancing in the sky, that was leading you to your next like main story location, basically. So if you stand at a grace, you'll see this like wispy golden hue aiming towards Stormvale Castle, which is that big castle up on the hill. So we head there because I don't need to tell you about 10 hours worth of open world nonsense. At the gates of Stormvale Castle, we're stopped by a character that looks strangely like those Omen fellas that calls himself Margit. You remember Morgott was one of the sons of Godfrey, because he calls himself Margit. So I'm sure that's not a coincidence.
Okay.
Margit tells us to turn back, and instead we fight him, and he runs away. We continue through Stormvale Castle. We're fighting the dregs of a character named Godric, who, that's a G.
It's a G.
Yep. That's who I was thinking of Godfrey earlier, but I know there's going to be a connection, so I'll just shut up.
He is a descendant of Godfrey, exactly.
Yep, of course.
So maybe he's got some of that Elden magic. Maybe he does. Along the way, we learn Godric's full title is Godric the Grafted.
Yeah, he nasty.
He's a nasty boy. So why do you guys think he's called Godric the Grafted?
Probably some normal reason. Yeah.
I've already seen the boss fight.
You've seen it.
Video of this to know the answer.
Yeah, the answer is he loves grafting pieces of dead tarnished bodies onto himself and other things like Sid from Toy Story.
Yeah, like
Is
I
that your
said,
guess?
some normal reason.
That was pretty much my guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been correct. So he is who created that spider nightmare at the beginning of the game, and we get to see his shit firsthand when we arrive in the castle courtyard. And this is image 27 is Godric the Grafted.
He grafts a dragon's head onto his fist at one point.
Yeah, he does. His arm he uses a dragon's head to shoot flame out of his left arm.
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Pretty neat.
A real
Yeah, it's pretty
Megazord
cool.
moment.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty fucking cool.
If any character ever deserves the title The Grafted, it certainly is this man.
This is a very good boss fight. This is like really like the first major wall of the game, basically.
Yeah.
So we kill Godric, and we leave through the other side of the castle, and we see a cliff overlooking this huge marshland down in the valley. In image 28, we see Liurnia, and this is very blue. 2, this is our next destination on our hit list of demigods. So like as Todd mentioned, it isn't not Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
So let me, from the map here, where was the castle?
Yeah, so bottom, do you see that little red continent? It's right to the left of the red continent. So we're moving northwest through this large watery area all the way to the west.
And that's
So
Larna?
we're moving up, and that's Liurnia. So that's where we are right now.
Okay, cool.
So does not flow off the tongue.
Sure.
So we gallop across the flooded swamps, the lakes of Liurnia is what they're called. And we head toward this big church-looking castle in the distance. That is the Academy of Raya Lucaria. Now, you may remember I mentioned this before. So Radagon, when he was first summoned, he was sent to Liurnia to quell the rebellion in Raya Lucaria. Raya Lucaria, the very tight 30 here is, Raya Lucaria was the source of glintstone magic, which is just this world's magic. This is the Mage Guild. This is the school of weirdo wizards, right?
I'm gonna say always normal things all going on in fantasy academies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Raya Lucaria is the stronghold of Renala, who you may remember was Radagon's first wife and mother to Rani, Radon, and Rykard. Now, as we break into Raya Lucaria, we find that it's been taken over by the kind of sorcerer army of the school. I don't have a picture here, but all of the sorcerers wear these weird KFC guy masks, stone masks on their heads.
Oh, weird.
It's very disturbing. They actually not KFC. They look like the Burger King masks. They look like the Burger King character.
The
Burger King
masks. Good.
They're very they're surreal enough to be really creepy. So ever since Radagon left, Renala never really recovered over that heartbreak, and she kind of dove into this despair spiral and locked herself away in her study and effectively became a hermit awaiting his return. So in that, this kind of upset, because she was the leader of these two factions, which did not always see eye to eye. You got the royals and the students, and she was the glue that held them both together. And when she basically dipped out, all hell broke loose. And so the Raya Lucaria kind of strong arms took over, rebelled against the rest, and basically created this police state inside of Raya Lucaria, inside the academy. So Renala gets imprisoned in her study along with some of her faithful, some of her people. So we fight through mobs of these Burger King sorcerers, and we finally make it to Renala's study, where we find her surrounded by undergrads, basically, which is really fun. The scene changes, so this boss fight is kind of really trippy. So if you guys remember that image I showed you before of Renala with the big moon in the background, that's actually the boss arena. We get transported to this we're walking on water with this huge fucking full moon in view, and this battle is this ridiculous magic sniper battle where Renala's just pew-pewing a bunch of magic bullets at you, and you're trying to fight off the little undergrad scholars. It's very chaotic. When you finish that fight, that illusion is dispelled, and what we're left with is what's really in front of us, which is just like this very sad lady, a semi-crazed Renala huddled in a corner clutching this golden egg, which we learn this golden egg was a gift from Radagon the day he left. And that's image 29.
Oh.
Huh.
I'm pretty sure I saw this weird magic library fight on stream from one of our patrons, Junk Soldier. It was weird.
It is weird. It's a really cool fight. It's very different.
Yeah. It looks like he's holding a potato.
It kind of does look like she's holding a potato.
It does look like a potato.
Yeah, that potato represents, and I don't know the magic behind it. That potato is a rune. That is like her Elden Ring rune, basically. That potato represents like the rebirth, basically, like the law of rebirth. So we reclaim that rune and allow it. Now we can respec.
Oh, good.
Cool. So we get the fuck out because nobody needs to stay there any longer. Okay. So now we are moving. The main scenario would have us moving northeast up to the Altus Plateau, which is where the School of Lanedell, where the capital of Lanedell sits. However, we can't do that until we have a key to access the lift. I'm not going to talk about how we get the key because it's not very exciting, but what I am going to talk about are 2 more optional areas containing some more demigods that we can knock off if we so want to, because the thing about this game is there are several bosses. I think there are like 5 or 6 demigods before you get to Lanedell. You only have to kill 2 of them.
Oh.
And I don't think you even have to kill. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's completely optional which of those demigods you kill. You just have to kill 2 of them. So it is following the like Breath of the Wild format of like, you can free the ancestor, the guardians if you want to. You don't have to.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. So next up is actually, we're going to go back down south. We're going to go to that red continent that looks kind of like Mars in the southeast portion. That is called Caelid. Now, Caelid, it's right next to Limgrave, as I pointed out before. It's accessible right at the beginning of the game. It's just that place has some pretty intimidating, horrifying nightmares for you as a low-level character. You go from fighting bandits to like ravens with like human feet. It's not fun.
Oh,
that's different.
Bomber. Yeah, when you started the ravens with humid, and then there was
didn't think I would say
came
feet?
After. Feet
was
there.
Not, was
Me neither.
On the list. Yeah.
So this area is most iconic for being shrouded in this red haze, which we learn is the after effects of the Scarlet Rot from that battle between Millennia and Radahn. That's why I say that battle is like kind of one of the most important things that happen. So image 30 is of a panorama of Caelid, which is very different looking. It is a red wastes graveyard.
Yeah.
It's the elephant graveyard, basically.
Yeah. Mars is a good way to describe it. It looks like if we colonized Mars and then came back 1,000 years later.
Yeah, and then ravens grew feet.
And then ravens had human feet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that happens, you know.
It does not. So we do what we do best, which is head toward the biggest castle and or fortress that we can see. This time, as you see that big tower in the distance is connected to a large gate that's overlooking this huge desert area that is not accessible, but we can see it from where we are. The NPCs in this here explain that we're just in time for the Radahn Festival, which is
good.
Basically, right. As you can imagine, like
sounds fun.
It is. It's effectively like an American Idol who's who of like intrepid heroes and bandits being collected to fight against the legendary general himself, General Radahn, in image 31.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a little bit about General Radahn. So Todd
his
mentioned
little
it.
Horsey.
As his little horse, yeah. So if you can't see it, it's right at the bottom center, like really where his peen would be. There's a little sad looking little horse.
You could have just said underneath him where horses would typically be.
Where a man would ride a horse.
Where his peen would be.
In my defense, he is crouching. So Radahn is a big fucking dude. Radahn is built like a skyscraper, built like a brick shithouse skyscraper. And the lore of Radahn is, remember I said like these kids ascended into godhood after Radagon left. So Radahn was like training to become a great warrior, and just like became a great warrior.
He did it.
Became a nightmare. And you know, he was still kind of like, he was still leading this army, and he wanted to continue riding his horse. He loved his horse, Lewis. I forget the horse's name. Was it Leonard? Leonard. And he loved his horse Leonard so much that he traveled to this like far off magic town and learned gravity magic.
So his tiny frail horse could still support his giant skyscraper body.
Exactly. And
honestly, the lore is
great.
Really good.
It's really good, man.
It's pretty great.
It's the best kind of like weird side story. It also shows that like Radahn, by all accounts, was like a good dude. Everybody who served with him really liked him. He was a great general. He worshipped Radagon and he worshipped Godfrey. Like these were like the two heroes, his icons in his eye. Part of his whole backstory too is he's known as Star Scourge, and one could surmise from all of the gravitational magic he's accumulated, he's basically developed the means to like halt the stars in the sky, which if you are living in a world that has been impacted by meteors in the past, probably a pretty good thing to have.
Yeah. Objectively cool as well.
Yes. So that's Radahn's whole thing. Turns out though, what we find out is General Radahn hasn't been doing great since that fight with Millennia. While they fought, if you saw that, those of you that have seen that video have noticed that Millennia, like, she jumps on top of him, and you can see her stab herself in the chest. It's like a little like above her stomach, and this big lotus flower, this big like bright red lotus flower appears on her back, and that is her unleashing like the full force of her scarlet rot on top of Radahn and the surrounding area. And it is that moment, that's what effectively choked the nearby landscape and created this like red haze Mars effect. But what that also did was effectively deplete Radahn of his sanity and left him with this like berserker like bloodlust. So literally like Radahn has spent the last X number of years just running around the battlefield, pissing and shitting and screaming and yelling and just like kind of killing whatever comes his way. So this whole Radahn festival is a ruse. It's a ruse on the account of his army to like give him a mercy kill, basically.
Well, in the fight against Radahn, can't you just summon a shit ton of people?
You can summon a shit ton of people, and it's still hard as balls.
Yeah, like the videos I've seen, there's two big highlights of the video.
Yeah.
Three if you count the small little horse.
Yeah.
So the small little horse. The fact that there's just a dozen different summon spaces you keep running across and like pulling more ghosts in to get absolutely really obliterated.
That pot man is one of the best summons that you can pull. You can also pull in Patches. Remember Patches?
Oh yeah, Patches, the weird dude who tries to kill you in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really fun about this fight from the video that I saw is Radahn just like gets the fuck out at some point, and you're like, oh cool, so he's fleeing, and I'll find him again later. And then he shows up like a comet crashing into the earth. You're not ready for it.
He fucking summons Comet on your ass like Sephiroth.
Oh my god,
it's wild. That battle is insane. And honestly, like if you're gonna watch a video of any battle from Elden Ring, I think this is the most the most visceral, the most fun to watch. Not the hardest, not the most technical, but just the most fun to watch.
The best version of it is someone did a TikTok and they stitched it with the song Roundabout.
Oh,
just as Radahn flies back in with that like bass lick kicks in.
Oh man, that's really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's so we do that fight. As Todd said, he sends meteors to kill your ass. We eventually do X Radahn, and a cutscene plays, and we watch. Our character looks up as there is this like massive star shower because all of the stars that he had been holding up in the sky start to just like comet out. And it's a really cool scene. One of those comets lands as a meteor and lands like pretty close in a nearby area of Caelid, and we see this like huge explosion. That will become relevant later. So the other major optional area at this point is Mount Gelmir. Now if you're going throughout the game as normal, you'll probably have encountered this NPC quest line. This NPC quest line is like, find my necklace, blah, 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 who cares? But if you completing that quest line will teleport you to the top of Mount Gelmir. You can also just like walk there, but I think most people casually will like be teleported there, unsurprisingly. So either way, we reach the top of the mountain, and situated right at the mouth of this like huge volcano is the appropriately named Volcano Manor.
Oh, creative.
Huh.
Yeah. Now inside, we meet a group of NPCs who at first all seem to be like 100% Tarnished's rights. Like when I was like role playing here, I came in, I'm like, hell yeah, like my Tarnished brothers, let's get like kill the, let's take down the tyranny, like whatever. They are strong advocates of dismantling the Golden Order. This is kind of the first really major hint that like, oh, there are people that are like not down with the Greater Well. Now their whole thing is like the Tarnished need to take back the grace, like everybody deserves the grace, yada yada yada, and we're like hell yeah, and they task us with assassinating like a half dozen or so high-ranking members of the Golden Order. So like dope, absolutely. This also introduces the game's invasion mechanic, which is again another Dark Souls thing. We've talked about it before, but it's the multiplayer. So we can choose to do that, or we can just like sneak our way through the manor. Regardless of that, we can find a secret area that leads out back. And exiting out the back entrance will reveal there's a little bit more than meets the eye here to Volcano Manor. We see an entire city literally built inside of a volcano in Image 32.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is inside the volcano.
Good place to put your city.
Oh.
Yeah. But the city is crawling with autonomous torture machines.
Oh, geez.
Oh, beans. In addition to the torture machines, there's just like snake people everywhere. That's weird.
I mean, it's not like out of character from what you've told us so far, but not
yeah,
great.
fair point. Yeah.
Who
That's
hasn't
fair.
encountered an ancient city of snake people from time to time?
So we learned that Praetor Reichard, before the fall, if you will, Praetor Reichard was an inquisitor, and he was known for being a hard ass. He was known for being like
for doing a torture,
but like people didn't know like to what level of depravity level of shit he was getting into.
Sure.
Up until this point, we also know that Reichard, after a certain point, was considered to be a blasphemer. But again, we don't really know why. So we learned that, the NPCs talking about like tarnished rights and all that stuff, like that was part of his rebellion. Reichard got sick of the fickleness of the Greater Will and led this rebellion against the Order. He was like, dang it, I've been torturing all these people in the name of the Greater Will, and that sucks. So I'm going to lead this, like, create a new world, blah, 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 right? And, like, this was the people that went with him, like, legitimately saw him as, like, a true voice for those left behind and shunned by the Greater Will. We even learned that like he kept ties with his other siblings, Radon and Ronnie, and Reichard was actually the one who co-conspired with Ronnie to kill Godwin, to steal the Death Rune and kill Godwin. So, okay, fine, maybe he's turned a new leaf. However, we then learn from like a random wandering spirit NPC, doesn't matter, Reichard apparently discovered another ancient entity that lived in the lands between long before the Greater Will. We just know that as a serpent god. The Christian imagery comes back.
Yeah.
So Reichard made a deal with this serpent god to allow himself to be devoured in exchange for great power, quote unquote.
Usually goes well.
So this kind of led him down a dark path, as you will, and the spirit says his ambition turned to depravity. And as part of this new conquest, Reichard, as an element of also the Great Serpent, would go on to devour his enemies, and like basically like they would become part of the Great Serpent. And he developed an insatiable hunger etc., etc. Everyone turned away from this, and eventually he was left with nothing but his empire of dirt and snake monsters and torture porn.
I mean, it's not that much of an empire of dirt. Something's going for it.
That's true. So we travel to the center of the volcano and face off with the serpent god himself. We get the serpent god down to a half a life bar, and the serpent reveals its underbelly, its soft underbelly. Whoops, that's a man's face.
Oh no!
Image 31 is Rykart revealing he is the face of the bottom side of the big old serpent, and he's got a big sword of limbs.
I like that.
Yeah, image 33 is that's his big sword of wraggling limbs.
I've tried to not look ahead historically as we do these flavor texts. That little creepy noggin of his peeped up after I saw image 32.
Yeah.
I'm glad I finally know what I'm looking at.
Yeah. He's fun. When he talks, he's like, "Together we will devour the very gods," and he's got like a little serpent hiss.
Good.
So we take down Serpent Rykard and his sword of raglan limbs, and we leave Volcano Manor, questioning every decision we've made up to this point. So we follow the Grace and jump back on the main quest line and finally ascend the lift to Altus Plateau, which is home of Lane-Del and the Erd Tree, and that's image 34. So we've kind of made it to the final area, right? This has got like big endgame vibes. We see this sky of absolute golden, the Erd Tree very clearly in the distance, but like very close, way closer than it has been forever before. So we're fighting through the remaining castle's defenses, finally make it to the heart of the Golden Order, Lane-Del. Now, it's at this point, Melina parts ways with us, as this was the deal. She's like, "Hey, thank you, peace." Like, this whole time we've been talking to Melina, she's being like our Navi, right? Like, you know, we're best friends, and she's like, you know, salutes out, like, "Peace, see you later."
Yeah.
And we get to Lane-Del, and Lane-Del's interesting because, as you can see, but outside in Altus, like, you know, we're introduced with this like golden light, and then we get into Lane-Del and it looks like shit. Like it kind of just looks like shit. Most notably, like it's really pretty. Like there's this massive castle and like fortress and, you know, castle town, but like there's a big old dragon corpse just kind of like nestled in the middle of it. And the fun thing about this is this was the corpse of the only ancient dragon to have made it to Lane-Del's gates. You may remember, you know, eons before this, there was the war with the ancient dragons. And this ancient dragon breached the capital, but was also ultimately struck down. And they kept it here, basically like head on a pike kind of a situation, like, "Hey, don't mess with us. We're Lane-Del. Like,
don't send any more dragons.
Don't send any more dragons." So, but it's really cool because the way that they built this level is like this fortress is literally built like on top of this dragon. So you're kind of like you're kind of scaling this massive dragon husk like in and out of these like walls, like going out of in and out of like towers and stuff. It's really cool. It's really cool design.
It's like when a whale dies and sinks to the bottom of the ocean, a whole bunch of like life congregates around it until they pick the whale corpse clean. Except on a much larger scale. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. It's important to note here in Lane-Del, we can access what is probably the biggest reveal in this game's plot through a side quest. We'll find out this reveal later, but like it's spelled out in this side quest. So long story short, earlier we learn about a statue that was commissioned to be built inside the capital. The statue looks like a bunch of other T-posing Radigan statues that we've seen up to this point. But we learned from a turtle pope, which is image 36.
Just quite literally, turtle pope.
This
is my favorite video game character ever.
Yeah. It's if you put into an AI art generator, turtle pope.
If you put a pope hat on a Galapagos turtle, that's
Yep.
Right.
It's not even like a fantasy looking turtle. It is a Galapagos turtle in a pope hat.
It's a turtle with a Galapagos turtle with a pope hat. Mm-hmm.
I've never been so confident that they mocapped an animal.
Yeah, so we meet a turtle pope, and we learn from the turtle pope that the statue's creator learned of a dark secret while making the statue and hid it inside the statue. So the Turtle Pope, if we have enough intelligence, will teach us a spell called the Law of Regression, which is just like an AoE faith spell. But using that spell by the statue reveals a hidden message that says, Radagon is Marika. I want to bring us back to an hour ago when Kyle said, is there incest shit here?
There it is.
And I said, that will become relevant later. So that's the big reveal, is Radagon and Marika are the same person.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, how does that work functionally? That is one of the game's many big mysteries, is like, how does that actually work?
That's a question that only George R.R. Martin knows the answer to.
Yeah,
that's right, Matt.
Don't think about that one too hard.
Don't think about that one too hard. But that also recontextualizes, like, well, when Radagon went to marry Renala, if Radagon was already Marika, that would explain why their kids became gods. When Radagon, also why Godfrey was exiled, right? Like, Godfrey was exiled because Marika turned into Radagon and left and wanted to go quell this rebellion, right? So it does recontextualize a lot, and the game lets you kind of like fill in the gaps. But regardless of all that, the one fact is that at this point in time, Radagon and Marika are the same person.
Okay.
Cool.
So we wander through the capital's abandoned streets. Like I said, we're going up and down dragon skulls. We're mowing down more knights. We can also opt to travel down into the sewers. Remember I said how those Omen kids were just kind of like thrown into the sewers. Sewer level sucks. We're not going to do that. We're going to save that for later.
Dope.
Instead, we're going to go up and we're going to head into the inner chambers that house the Erd Tree. Eventually, we make it to a chamber, a kind of like a balcony, if you will, filled with thrones overlooking the side of the Erd Tree. And we see several empty thrones, about like 7 or 8 or so. A familiar voice explains that these are all the thrones abandoned by the heirs of the Golden Order, i.e. Marika / Radagon's various children that we've learned about, all the demigods. And they all, decided to take their piece of the Elden Ring. They all took their piece of the inheritance and fucked off instead of came back to, fix the house. So this familiar voice is none other than Morgott, who was the Omen that we meet in like the very first boss, who is frankly like not that big. This isn't a big reveal. He's not that important of a character, but just to note that like Morgott was Godfrey and Marika's second child. He is kind of like, he has become the family's keeper. He's trying to hold the family together as everyone else, he's doing the Michael from Arrested Development thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
But Ben, I think his character is interesting because, like, again, his whole life he was spent chained in a sewer, and from that he was like, no, I have to protect the Golden Order, the thing that said I had to spend my entire life chained in a sewer.
Left me chained in a sewer. Yeah.
So we fight Morgott and he dies. The other piece of info that we get from Morgott while we fight is like, hey, you've been lied to. No one can enter the Erd Tree. The Greater Will has blocked the Erd Tree off to everyone. Like, this is just how the world is now. Sucks to suck. Deal with it. And we're like, oh, fuck. So we get to the Erd Tree and, yep, turns out we can't get inside. The Erd Tree has indeed locked itself up tight.
Bummer.
So Navi appears, and is like,
hey, listen.
Yeah. She's like, hey, listen, that fucking sucks. Here's an option. What if, and just bear with me here, what if we burn the Erd Tree down? Could be fun. So
I don't know what you kids are up to.
Yeah.
Laws or threats.
So like, hey, just play with me in this space here. What if we burn it all down? And you as the player are like, well, I can't progress otherwise, so sure.
Why not?
So we leave Lanedell, and remember how I said don't worry about the Northern Wastes where the giants live?
Yeah.
We're going to the Northern Wastes.
We're going to
the Northern Wastes where the giants live. So we've learned, so Melina tells us like, okay, here's what we got to do. We got to go find the flame of the fire giants up in the Northern Wastes. don't worry about it. The fire giants are all but extinct.
Oh, good.
We gotta go find the Flame of Ruin. The Flame of Ruin is the only fire that's hot enough to burn the Erd Tree effectively.
It's Mountain Doom.
It's Mount Doom. Exactly, Kyle. So along the way, we fight the last of the fire giants who are definitely not extinct, who's guarding the Flame of Ruin. That's image 37. That's a cool boss fight. If you notice, do you see like how he has a head? Do you see its second larger, bigger head in its chest?
Yeah. When you said fire giants, I was like, those are the ones that have the faces on their bodies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Todd. So that's disturbing.
That would mean that its stomach is in its crotch or its butt.
It kind of reminds me. It has the same anatomy as the giants from Majora's Mask.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like if a thwomp
had arms and
legs.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
I just can't not see Krang from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
Also,
I hear it just going.
Is a Krang.
Yeah. It stomps around.
Well, and like that's kind of its fight. Is it just kind of slams down because it's an idiot. Like it's just a dumb idiot that just like It's so big that it can't like it puny human can't. So it just kind of like plops down on you. It's a thwomp. One hell of a fight.
It's a thwomp with arms and legs. Yeah.
So we fight the fire giant, and we reach the center of the Flame of Ruin. And Melon appears once more to tell us, hey, someone's gotta like serve as this flame's kindling. And then there's a pregnant pause, and she's like, haha, JK, I'll do it. Yeah. Okay. So she's just like, don't talk me out of it. Like, this has been the plan all along, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So she sets herself on fire, and it's pretty rough to watch. We then pass out for some reason, and we wake up in a new place.
Oh,
cool.
This similar thing happened in Bloodborne, right? Like we beat a boss, story moment happened, and then we pass out and wake up in a new ethereal plane of sorts. Okay.
And the some major thing is revealed to be set on fire.
Yeah.
And revealed to us and revealed to be set on fire. So you haven't seen it in the images, but just note, like all throughout this game, as you're exploring the lands, you constantly are seeing these like fallen ruins. And it is very much like if you played Tears of the Kingdom, like you can tell these ruins are unlike anything that else in this world. They very much look like they've literally fallen from the sky. And we can tell as much because we get little ruin fragments that say they fell from the sky. So, but like we don't really have any explanation other than that. Until we end up here where we find ourselves in image 38. And you can see the title card is in the image. It's called Crumbling Farum Azula. And that's a nonsense name. But what it is that exact ruin that is floating high up in the sky. And you can see just like this pastiche here of like a bunch of fucking tornadoes everywhere. Like this thing is in the middle of an active windstorm. So it's cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah. That tornado is ominous.
Yeah, it sure is. So we make our way through this draconic temple that again is like literally being ripped apart by a tornado. And at the center of the crumbling islands, we find an NPC that I haven't talked about until this point because he frankly hasn't been that important. There's this guy called the Beast Clergyman, which if you can give him this like key item called Death Root, and he's like, nom nom, I want more death, nom 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 nom. And then he kind of hulks out. Like if you give him too much Death Root, he hulks out, and then he's like, don't come back. Rah!
Sure.
Well, you see him here, and you're like, the fuck? Why are you here? And he's like already like, he's all hulked out. He's already in berserk mode, and he just attacks. So you fight him, and once you get him down, second health bar appears. He takes off the cowl, and this is Malekith, the Black Blade.
Oh.
I forgot the image, but I have an image. I'll put it in later. This will be image 39. I'm going to make a note. You can look it up if you really want to see Malekith, the Black Blade. Todd can cut this out.
I'm leaving it.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I've seen this.
Oh, yeah.
So we fight this guy, we kill Malekith, and we reclaim the Rune of Death. And what this is a very like, again, this is a very dreamy weemy sequence, but what we learn is like this was the only way Malekith was hidden, was in this like this temple hidden far up in the sky, right? So that's why nobody knew where Malekith was. After we fight Malekith, we reclaim the Rune of Death and are transported back to Leyndell. And very much in that Bloodborne moment, we awaken covered in ashes, and we're on what looks like a sandy dune, but inside the capital Leyndell, and above us we see the Erd Tree is actively on fire.
Oh,
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So at this point, this is endgame. So we can certainly head to the Erd Tree for the final confrontation, or we can mop up a couple more side areas and knock off the few remaining demigods.
Guess what? Guess which one we're gonna do.
Hell yeah, baby! Now, again, this game is massive. I haven't covered. There is an entirely separate like underground world that exists under the majority of the map, the above ground map. It is not unlike the Tears of the Kingdom reveal. When you go underground, you're like, there's a second game underground. Holy shit.
Yeah.
You can access it, and this is a pretty iconic moment for a lot of people. Like, you can access this world for the first time in a hidden elevator that you unlock in an optional boss fight, like in the first area. And you take this elevator down, and again, like, you have a sense of place, like you're going through this tomb, so you expect to take this elevator down to a catacomb, and what you instead see is an elevator that's taking you down like Willy Wonka glass elevator style. You've seen this like starry night sky underground. Ooh. And it is the coolest fucking moment in this game, you guys. Like, it's wild. And this, so you learn this, like, you keep coming back to this underground society and learn there's like this like whole civilization that existed before, and we're not going to get into any of that lore because frankly that would take another episode. It's very cool but irrelevant to what we've been talking about. So I'm just going to kind of yada yada through it. And note that, hey, remember that meteor that we triggered after the Radahn fight?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can access through that crater that's created and access a new portion of this underground world, essentially. That crater in particular will lead you through a series of more underground ruins. It's wild. That leads to the lair of Mohg, who is Morgoth's twin brother, the other Omen guy.
The other Omen, yeah.
Yeah, which we haven't really talked about Mohg at all, but like I told you, basically, like Morgoth was kind of this like, he was acting as this like black ops, agent for the family, for the greater good, or for greater well, excuse me.
The greater good.
The greater good. Mohg was like, no, fuck that. We spent our entire lives in captivity. I'm gonna create my own cult with hookers and blood magic.
Hookers and blackjack on the moon.
Yeah, and he did it with blood magic. So he created his own type of sorcery that's called Blood Flame. It's very cool. It's very cool and was the source of my build when I played through Elden Ring. So I was like, hell yeah, brother. And then he built a whole ass cult around it.
To which Andrew also said, hell yes, brother.
I was kind of like, hell yes, brother, until I realized Mohg's not a great guy. He's kind of fucked up. But
the guy who made blood magic is not a good guy,
right? Why?
Couldn't have guessed. Just wouldn't have guessed.
Yeah. So after literally hours of delving through like hidden area after hidden area, you hop in a coffin, which does have precedence in Souls games. I'm not kidding. When I saw this coffin, I was like, I'm gonna hop in that coffin because I know that's gonna take me to a secret, and it did. And it takes you to you ride this coffin like a boat across a river of blood. And you end up in another secret area called Mohgwyn's Palace. And this is the home of Mohg, Omen of Blood. Now, this is a secret boss. He's really hard, blah, blah, blah. What's wild, though, is this cutscene kind of fakes us out because it starts with this cocoon showing like a twiggy white pale arm emerging and then falling limp. That is the state of, remember Mikola, the twin boy who was like cursed to be a little frail Victorian lad?
Mikola Ultra, yeah.
Yeah, Mikola Ultra. So, as it turns out, Mohg had taken Mikola, and part of his scheme for power, Mohg's scheme for power, was he was going to use Mikola's like Empyrean status. Remember I said like Mikola was deemed as a chosen one. He's going to use Mikola's status for his own good to become Mikola's consort. We kill Mohg before he can do that. Image 39 are effectively, 30, which will be 30, which image 40, which is for you guys 39, is the cocoon of Miquella's like dead arm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's
Cool.
in, and you can see behind it that starry night sky. So this is like, again, deep, 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 deep underground.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So why was Miquella stuck in that weird egg cocoon, huh?
That's a good question, Andrew.
I really wasn't going to ask the question.
I'm glad you asked. So that question is answered through the game's final optional endgame area, the Halig tree. This is the hardest part of the game. This is like really like, hey, do you want more Elden Ring? Do you want more fucking painstakingly hard content? Well, here you go, man.
Now get good, scrub.
Yeah, get good, scrub. So, to make a very, very long story short, I mentioned earlier, Miquella and Malenia were cursed at birth. The twins were very, very close growing up, each other pledging themselves to the other, pledging themselves to protect the other. So Malenia pledged herself as Miquella's blade, something that she reminds you every time you die at her hands, which if you play as Malenia, you have heard her say that 300 times. Malenia, as Miquella's blade, would protect him as his feeble Victorian lad body could not. Now, Miquella, on the other hand, dove into science and technology. Both of these two people, objectively good people trying to change the world for the better. Miquella dove into science and tech to try and find a way to cure his sister's scarlet rot. And after years and years of painstaking research, he never really found anything to cure it, but he did develop a way to stall it, which is basically called unalloyed or otherwise synthetic gold. Because again, gold is very much a thing. Gold is the arm of the greater will, the golden order. So this is like unalloyed, like synthetic gold. This is a blasphemous gold, if you will.
Oh,
Sure.
Okay.
Miquella created those iconic prosthetics that we see Malenia wearing in all of those videos. So that armor, that golden armor, that's that synthetic gold armor that Miquella creates for her. In addition, we learned that Miquella creates a golden needle, and this golden needle is effectively like a kill switch for the let's call it a kill switch for the scarlet rot. I think she like punctures her neck or something. I can't quite remember, but basically that staves off the rot to her head and torso. So she's still like effectively alive, but like her limbs are completely trashed. Miquella, meanwhile, all this, was continued to search for answers for how do I save my sister? How do I fix myself? But more importantly, like, how do we fix this whole like Erd tree nonsense?
This whole greater will situation.
Yeah. So Miquella decided that he was going to build his own version of the Erd tree. Not one of blackjack and hookers, but one where like a very idyllic society where everyone is welcome to this tree. All, give us your poor, your suffering, right? Like he's taken all the outcasts. And furthermore, like this new tree would give him the power to cure his own condition and also Malenia's rot. So Miquella and Malenia kind of set off to establish this expansive colony of outcasts and rejects at the base of their new Erd tree they called the Halig tree. But the whole thing was that they needed to give this tree life. So Miquella built this cocoon where he would give himself up to the tree. He would do so by entering the Land of Shadow. What does that mean? I have no fucking idea.
Cool.
But he did it.
It's a cool sounding lore
Great.
setting. Yep.
Dope. So that's why he's living in this weird ass cocoon, because he gave himself up to the tree. The problem was Moog stole his body in cocoon form halfway through, thereby like resulting in halting the Halig tree's process. So the Halig tree only kind of exists as like a trunk. Basically. And Miquella has also been subjected to be trapped forever, frozen in the cocoon in the Land of Shadow. Again, what does that mean? No idea. So,
it's probably
at the
bad.
bottom,
if I had to guess, it's not
probably
good.
bad.
Seems
I'd have
not
to guess,
great.
yeah.
Not great. So at the bottom of the Halig tree, the Halig tree, this is this last kind of endgame area. We make our way down to below the roots, and we find Millennia waiting to kick our ass again and again and again until a naked man with a pot on his head comes to save our filthy casual ass. So image 41 is of Millennia, 40 for you. This is a pretty straight. This is actually phase 2 of the boss fight where she fully succumbs to the scarlet rot, and you can see that like this transforms her into this like angelic creature. She's looks really fucking cool. She's got 2 angel wings made of red crimson scarlet rot, and she's pounding on you with her big sword. This Millennia fight is really hard. It's the hardest boss fight in any Dark Souls game ever created. It's entirely optional. You don't have to do it, but if you do it, you get street cred. So let's talk for a brief second about Let Me Solo Her.
I was going to say, this is the time.
This is where Let Me Solo Her comes in. So this guy, in the early days of Elden Ring. So again, Elden Ring, like Dark Souls before it, has a multiplayer component where you can summon in real people to help you with the boss fights. It does like increase the damage, or it increases the boss's health, so it does balance it a little bit. Like it's not overpowered, but it is certainly a way. It's always been a way to circumvent the more difficult boss fights. So this guy created an account called Let Me Solo Her, and basically like played this fight so many times that he had perfected it to the level of like he could beat it perfectly without getting hit with wearing 0 armor. Like the reason why this dude is naked is because he's not taking any damage.
It's a flex.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a flex. And he's wearing a pot on his head because that's a thing you can get from the pot man. And it was called the gimmick account was called Let Me Solo Her, and I think he ended up like in the span of a couple months had beat Millennia like 400 times.
It was the number was so high at one point.
Yeah, it was absurd.
But the whole bit with Let Me Solo Her was like if you try to partner, if you do anything, he dies.
He leaves.
He leaves. He's like, nope, you don't get. It's like I'm gonna solo her. Like so, it was like I'm gonna beat this really hard boss for you, but like I'm gonna do it my way.
Yeah,
sure. Okay.
So, yeah, that's Let Me Solo Her. That became very much a thing. So we've beaten all the demigods. We've gotten all of the random fragments of the Elden Ring. We can also, if you beat Millennia, we can get her unalloyed golden needle, which will become important later. But finally, now it's time to take the fight to the Erd Tree and to the Greater Well. So we arrive back at the palace that's housing the Erd Tree. Weirdly enough, our buddy Gideon Ofnir is here, because until this point, he was just kind of like the main scenario quest giver. He's not happy to see us and just straight up attacks us in this like crazed fit. After we take him out, we get his helmet, and in the item description, it says Gideon found something about Marika that horrified him and caused him to abandon his quest for the Elden Lord. We can assume that he found out that Marika is Radagon. However, I think that he actually discovered something else, which we haven't learned yet. So we make our way deeper still and are approached by none other than Godfrey, Lion Avatar and all. Remember Godfrey? He's the guy with the Johnny in his back.
Yeah.
He's just hanging out. He's like, "Hey, you wanna fight?"
And because the way this game has been, the answer is yup.
Yeah, sure.
I know. I also fucked up. I realized I didn't put an image here as well. So we're gonna. So sorry. We're gonna have an image. So we fight Godfrey and we get him down to half health. And in a cutscene, he fucking straight up murders his Ajani familiar and dispels his glamour to reveal himself as Horalu, chieftain of the Badlands. We haven't really heard this name except for the fucking introduction of the intro scene of the game. But you guys can look up Horalu, but this boss fight fucking rules. It's basically a Street Fighter fight. Like he fights like Ryu.
Nice.
It's the coolest. Like he just punches you. Like he's just a punch god. And it's brutal as hell, and it looks really cool. So we fight Horalu. Now, as you guys are searching for that image, you can get the image on the side. But like I'll explain that it's unclear to us now. Like, so Godfrey and Horalu are the same person. It's not clear though, like Was he Horalu before he became Godfrey, or was he always Godfrey and then became Horalu after he was exiled? Regardless, like Horalu is effectively the starting line, the progenitor of the Tarnished. So he's our great granddaddy.
Okay.
And we fight him like a Street Fighter character, and it's sick as hell.
Cool.
Thank you for that attribution. So after that fight, we finally make it back to the front of the Erd Tree, which is still much on fire. We walk through the previously impervious opening made of roots and enter the Erd Tree. And inside, we find none other than Marika, strung up on that golden rune like we've seen her, in a very Jesus on the cross-like pose. Again, this is this image we've seen again and again and again. As we approach closer, those bindings begin to snap and shatter as Marika drops to the ground. The camera pans up to see a decrepit, like sinewy hand, like zombie-looking hand, grasp a golden hammer, and the figure's matted blonde hair turns to a deep crimson. And if by this point we already know that Marika and Radigan are the same person, this is not a huge reveal. But if we didn't do that side quest, this is the game showing hey, these are the same person. And the reveal is that Marika is in fact the same person as Radigan, as Radigan's masculine figure emerges and the figure attacks in image 44.
What are we looking at here, Andrew?
So this is Radigan. This is Radigan's kind of like husk of a body attacking you. Now, Kyle had asked an hour and a half ago, what does the Elden Ring look like? What physical form does the Elden Ring take? And the reason why I couldn't answer that is because the Elden Ring is literally Radigan. Like Radigan / Marika. Like
Gotcha.
The Elden Ring is housed in their body.
Got it.
Okay.
So they are this like crumbling husk of a figure held together literally by the waning power of the Elden Ring.
This is 41.
This is 41 in your version, and this is 44 in Ultimate.
Sorry, I was looking at what the next image is and asking the question of what are we looking at.
Sorry.
I will hold that question.
It's cool. Sorry, that's my bad.
No,
so
it's
the like human. It's the humanoid character with the red hair.
The one fighting Kratos.
The one
fighting Kratos.
I think that's an Avatar Aang cosplay
build.
It might be
those are Chaos Blades.
Yeah,
that's
those are
Kratos.
Chaos
that might be.
Blades.
Oh, you're right. I see it now. Yeah, that's definitely a Kratos build. You're right. Anyway, this is a really good boss fight. Radigan has a golden hammer. Radigan has like very much like paladin style. Like it's really fun. We kill Radigan and we're like, hell yeah, game's over. Except it's not, because Radigan's corpse begins to like ooze this dark fog and slime. And eventually the entire area is covered in this like black haze. A golden, like, I would call it an arm, but it's more of a tentacle emerges from this sludge. Yeah. A golden tentacle emerges from the sludge, and we see the true puppet master behind Marika and Radigan, the Elden Beast. And
this is where I wanted to know what I'm looking at.
Yeah. This is image 45,
Beast,
42 for you guys. So it's a big kind of goopy dragon looking thing with no head, and it looks kind of like a constellation skeleton, but it's also holding a golden sword.
If you would have asked me in 7th grade to draw you a penis dragon, this would be it.
Yeah, man, that's a penis dragon.
Yeah, man,
I was going to go more. What were they? The Chow Chaos evolved Goopy Men from Sonic. Then put it in the body of a Lapras from Pokemon and have it wield a sword.
Yeah, I think all of those things are right. I'll be honest, I don't love the Elden Beast. I thought this was like kind of the worst fight of the game. It
also looks like it's just a hand puppet. There's a big hand underneath the water moving it around.
Its design feels off compared to all the other boss designs, which I imagine is part of it. It's supposed to be this like otherworldly thing.
It's a cosmic entity. Yeah. It's if you don't know that the Greater Will is basically an elder god, a cosmic entity at this point, which you probably don't because you haven't watched 40 hours of Vati video videos as you're playing through the game. This is very like weird. This is very disjointed in a way that like nothing else in this game is. A lot of people like the Elden Beast. I think it's fine. It's certainly not my favorite. It's one of those where it's just like the Radigan fight is so good that like by the time you get to the Elden Beast, you're like, oh my god, just like fucking
just kill me.
Like it just sucks. But whatever. So we kill the Elden Beast, and we are rewarded with, you guessed it, the Elden Ring. He said the name.
Said the name of the movie. Oh, you said it a long time ago, so
yeah.
Everybody gets one.
Yeah. So at this point, that's it. That's the end of the game. We have a few options, though. There are actually 6 endings to Elden Ring. And those 6 endings are based on whatever side quests that we've done up to this point. The default ending has the player, and honestly, they're pretty similar. This is very like Mass Effect 3 coded, where it's like 4 of the endings are basically the same endings with different colors, but that's fine. The default ending has the player basically like putting Radigan's severed head back on the husk body, the corpse, and that's like effectively reuniting the remaining Elden Ring shards with themselves, like mending the Elden Ring, basically.
The normie ending.
The normie ending. The Elden Ring is back together. The Erd Tree and the Greater Will are once again on top, albeit at a much lesser clip. We can tell because there's just like this kind of dull, murky brown glow instead of like the bright golden glow that we're used to seeing on Altus Plateau. Okay, this is where also all of that, like the rest of those names from the beginning of the game, those names are important. Those are NPC side quests. We just didn't have time to go through them. So there's Fia, the deathbed companion. Her whole thing is tied to Godwyn, the lifeless husk of Godwyn the Gold. Her like kind of desire is to reintroduce death. She worships death, and she wants to reintroduce death into the world. So if you finish her quest line, you can mend the Elden Ring to reintroduce the death rune, which is exactly that. Death is now possible in this world. This is the different color swap, is that the sky is like murky gray because everybody can die. Before, part of the reason why the Erd Tree had so much power is people didn't die. Their souls just went back to the Erd Tree as like fuel.
Okay.
So this means like people just die and like everything's going to decay, which means the Erd Tree is going to die as well. Cool. If you followed through Goldmask's quest line, he's the one, his head is a big old sun, like an actual, like it looks like the image of a sun, not like the praise the sun guy. He's a weirdo. He's just kind of this like very much, he's a true believer. If you follow his quest line, you can make the Elden Ring stronger and kind of like retain the golden age. So you know that now the sky is like a golden hue instead of that like kind of murky.
What's he the thing of? Like, what aspect was he tied to? Or
he's a priest. He's a priest. He's a priest of the Golden Order. So okay. And then if you follow through that little nasty boy, Dung Eater.
Ooh, the nasty boy.
He's a nasty boy. His whole thing is like he's probably the most fucked up character. He just like hates everybody. He wants to burn the world down.
Because they call him the Dung Eater.
So he's just eating shit about it?
He's just eating shit. But his whole thing is he wants to infect the world with this like terrible curse and parasite because he's the Dung Eater.
You eat dung one time.
That's all he needs. That's all it takes. So you basically like infect the Elden Ring with this terrible sickness if you do his quest line, and the sky is this like brownish red, which is indicating that everybody is now cursed. Everybody in this world is now cursed with this horrible sickness. So like, not great.
So if you do all of these side quests, do you get all of these?
You have to pick. Good question.
Okay.
So you can get all of these runes, but at the end, it's like, what rune do you sew into the Elden Ring, basically?
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah. I think what's probably the best ending and the one that I went with, which is like the most truest of the true endings, is actually Ronnie's quest line. Ronnie, aka Ronnie the Witch, the daughter of
the doll girl, right?
The doll girl. She has a pretty complicated quest line that actually like you'll carry through the entire game. Ronnie's, it's part of that is also like you find her real body. You find that's how you learn about a lot of the like she's the one that stole the death rune and like all those things. That's how you find out all that information. Ronnie is like, again, her whole thing is burn it all down. She's very much like anti-Golden Order. She's like, people need free will. I want to unchain people from the Golden Order. The moon, we used to derive power from the moon. Like my mom was a lunar witch. Like we used to, like the moon used to govern us. I want to return to form and to have free law. Will and to moon law. It's great. It's the best kind of law. It's moon law. So you can help Ronnie end the Erdtree's tyranny and become her consort. So she will supplant not Radigan. She supplants like Marika as like the new ruler, and you become her Elden Lord, ushering a new age under the Dark Moon, which like, cool, rad. Cool. Ronnie's great. Ronnie's a good character. And then there's one more ending, which is different. So again, there's a bunch of other like hidden factions. There's, various old gods, elder gods here that aren't part of the greater will. There's an entirely separate hidden faction we haven't talked about called the Frenzied Flame. And this is another one that appears time and time again throughout the game. You'll come across these devotees of the Frenzied Flame, and they're all like batshit crazy. You trick a woman into eating an eyeball. She thinks it's a grape, and she's an eyeball, and she becomes insane, and opens her third eye to the Frenzied Flame. Like it's weird. It's weird. So you can ultimately like find. So if you remember, I said like, hey, we're not going to the sewers. If you go to the sewers and you navigate your way down the sewers, you'll fight a bunch of omens there, and you'll eventually come across the HQ of the Frenzied Flame deep within the catacombs under the sewers. So it's another like hidden area, hidden within a hidden area kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
You come across like this catacombs is like it's a jumping puzzle. It's a classic Dark Souls jumping puzzle where you have to go from like thin beam down to thin beam. And I'm not kidding. There's a bunch of like skeletons playing the lute down there that are just like singing. It's
just jamming.
Fucked up. It's crazy. It's super fucking creepy.
Huh.
Eventually though, you'll come across the Three Fingers.
No.
What?
No. Are these okay? Wait, real question. Are these the three fingers of which belong to the other two fingers?
That is what the implication is. Yes.
Okay, so, I'm back in on all five fingers.
A thumb's not a finger.
Does this game have a master hand and crazy hand? Is that
it
what
does.
you're telling me?
It's crazy hand. It is literally fucking crazy hand. So image 45, 43 for you. That's the Three Fingers.
That's crazy
hand.
hand.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and if there's like when you're down in this catacombs, it's such a fucking moment. Like there's a bunch of like in-game messages that are like, hey, don't do this. Hey, you probably shouldn't open this door. If you open this door, you're gonna regret it. And there's a bunch of like player messages. Like players can leave messages that's like turn back, turn back, turn back. If you ignore all those messages, you can consort with the Three Fingers. And what happens is this fucking flaming claw will pick up your character and squeeze it and like basically brand you with the Frenzied Flame.
Oh.
Okay.
And this is something like you can't turn back from this. Like you can't undo this move. So if you happen to do this, you are
once you go Three Fingers, you never go back. Sorry.
That's right. You never go back to two. So once you do this, you are effectively like if you do this, you are effectively locked out of any other ending for the rest of the game. You are branded with the Frenzied Flame. Your best friend Melina will be like, "Hey, I can't be with you. I can't help you because you are going down a path that you will never recover from." Like it's pretty. It's the game is signaling that like this is the bad ending.
Sure.
There is one way to circumvent this. It is to beat the hardest boss, Millennia.
Good.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
It is the only reason that outside of just like cred that you would need to beat Millennia. Because the only way to circumvent the influence of the Frenzied Flame is to use the unalloyed golden needle you get from Millennia's corpse.
Oh.
If you don't do that, though, you will get the Lord of Frenzied Flame ending, which is the last image here on our list, which is your head turns into a fireball and you summon the Chaos Flame to engulf everything.
Pretty metal.
It's the Ghost Rider ending.
For a world that has thrown nothing at me but horrors.
Yeah.
Burnerate the countryside. Yeah.
Burninate the countryside. And that's Elden Ring. So the last thing I want to talk about is once the credits roll, there's a lot of questions. So you've at this point, you've rolled credits. You've watched now 40 hours of Vati videos to understand what the fuck just happened. But we're still left with a few questions. And the biggest of all is Mikola. Mikola, the little Victorian lad who's trapped in a cocoon in the Land of Shadows.
We get to see the little cracked cocoon egg arm thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really all we know at this point. Like, the game doesn't give us anything else about Mikola. We don't really know why, how did Moog get that cocoon and what was Moog planning, right? Like, what was Mikola's planning? Like, what was all happening here with the Halig Tree? So that was, like, kind of left open to us until last year it was announced in a tweet that Elden Ring was going to get DLC. And anyone who's a fan of a FromSoft game knows that FromSoft DLC is usually the best content. That has been the case by and large with every game except for DS3. We talked about the Hunter's Nightmare in Bloodborne is the old Hunter's DLC is the best Bloodborne content, and it recontextualized the whole story.
Yep.
So we're really hoping. So this DLC, we didn't really know what this was. It was just like DLC coming. Cool.
All right.
Actually, 2 months ago, February of this year, 2024, Jesus, we got a trailer confirming that the DLC would be all about Mikola lost in the Land of Shadow. So this is gonna answer all like, what the fuck is Mikola doing? Like, we're gonna probably have a fight with a grown Mikola. This is called the Shadow of the Erd Tree, and this DLC releases on June 21st, which is not very far away from the time of this recording.
I'm gonna call it now. The Land of Shadow is gonna be the dark Hyrule of Elden Ring.
It very much seems to be, yeah.
It's also kind of fun. Shadow of the Erd Tree, shadow-focused content dropping on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, is kind of fun.
Oh, that is fun.
That is really cool.
A fun note that is only relevant to me is Final Fantasy XIV's next expansion was originally set to come out June 21st, and the director, Yoshi P, said, we're going to push it back a week so you guys can play Elden Ring DLC. It's very funny to me.
Those
is very
cowards,
funny.
They wouldn't stand tall like Forza did.
Yeah, no, Horizon.
My mistake.
Yeah, that's why I don't remember it. Because
game recognizes game, and history is built by the winners. So,
Yoshi P, like on the stage, said you get 1 week. You get 1 week to play it. So that's Elden Ring. There's a lot more. I know we felt like we covered a lot. There's so much more that we didn't talk about. It's a big game. It's a big fucking game. It's got a lot of content. And there's so much more here if you would like to interact with it. If this sounds of interest to you, go play it. It's really good. If you've got a next-gen console, if you've got a PC, they fixed all the PC problems. So go play it, man. It's a good game. And that's it.
I got to give you credit, Andrew. I don't know if it's because this is the third one that we've done, so I've listened to 2 of these already, or this is the third one we've done, so you've put together 2 of these already, or if Elden Ring is just, it's really smoothed out the edges of Bloodborne and Dark Souls, but like, of the 3 FromSoft flavor texts, this has been the one that I have like followed along with, that I feel like is the most interesting. This is cool, and I don't know that Elden Ring is a game for me. If I could get a Souls-like that didn't contain loads of menuing and build out and was just like really hard boss fights, then it would be a platformer and I'd play it. But
yeah, that's fair.
It'd be Super Mario Sunshine.
It would be Super Mario Sunshine.
It'd be Super Mario Sunshine. You play Sekiro. That'd be the closest to what you're probably referring to. But
yeah. But anyway, I think this is really cool. I love the art for this game. This is beautiful.
It's so pretty. I mean,
yeah. So yeah, this was cool, man. I like this.
Thanks, man. I will say, I think all 3 of those are this is definitely like, I've definitely gotten the cadence, but this story is a lot more fleshed out than Dark Souls.
It's the George R. R. Martin of it all.
It's the George R. R. Martin of it all. Part of it too is that this game is different from Dark Souls in that you play like while you're playing through the game, stuff is still happening in the world, right? Like in Dark Souls, everything about Dark Souls story has already happened.
Yeah,
has happened. You're just kind of
pushing
living
the last story beat over the
exactly.
line. Basically,
You're experiencing the story in ruins. Whereas this is kind of like, a lot of the world has already crumbled to this point, but like a lot of these people are still alive. Like a lot of these, this is like you are essentially like solving a stalemate. So it makes it feel a lot more lived in.
Yeah.
You know, which I definitely like, and I think a lot of other people really took to. So
yeah, I was gonna just say some of the same things Matt said. This was the best story of the chunks of these games you shared. Like as you're reading through this, I was like, all right, like I like this. This is a fun, maybe fun's not the word, a more cohesive story that you can kind of grasp that there's family lines and dynamics and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. That's it. Well, thank you guys so much. Thanks everybody for listening to debate this. Of course, as always, you can follow along with the arguments on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at DebateThisCast, and most importantly on our website at debatethiscast.com. Finally, if you'd like to commission your own flavor text, we've done every FromSoft game, so maybe something else.
Except Sekiro.
Maybe something else. Maybe not a FromSoft game. I don't know. You do you. Head on over to patreon.com/debatethiscast. A one-time payment of $60 will allow you to tell us whatever game, franchise, movie, series, anime, anything else you want to talk about. Specifically, it's a one-time payment of $60, so all you need to do is set that, and then you can dial your monthly payment back to maybe the $5 to get yourself the private feed, or nothing at all. I don't give a shit. I'm not your dad. Do what you want. Yeah. Until next time, I'm Andrew Henderson.
I'm Matt. Green smoke means there's a new turtle pope. Cole.
I'm Kyle, guy who likes to go to Jewish weddings just to do the dance where they pick people up in the chair. Call him Horaloo Harper.
And I'm Todd. A Tarnished wakes up with amnesia and now must fight against the government to get his memories and old life back. Call that the Bloodborne identity, Thomas.
Wow. And we're saying thanks for debating with us, and if you think we're wrong, you can come fight us behind the swing sets, nerds.